Hello, everyone. Welcome to our event. Bonjour à tous. Minasama konnichiwa. Thank you so much for joining us today. We would like to welcome you to Expansion to Canada, why you should consider Toronto for electric mobility. This event is presented to you by Fasken, the Japan Society of Canada, and Toronto Global. My name is Asami, and I'm the Executive Director of the Japan Society. For those who are not familiar with us, Japan Society is a Canadian national non-for-profit organization funded by members to strengthen business, educational, and cultural relations between Canada and Japan. We're based in Toronto. We're part of National Association of Japan-America Societies, and over 35 of our counterparts are based across the US, including the one in San Francisco and LA. I thank our co-host, Fasken, and Fasken's team, who's all behind this, and Toronto Global for working with us to put this together. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our special sporting organizers, JETRO San Francisco, JETRO Toronto office, and Toronto Shokokai. Here's a little bit of house rules for today. Please note that your microphones and videos are disabled during the event. We welcome your questions in the Q&A box, and we will address them to speakers during the panel in the second half of the event. This event is recorded, will be edited, and shared with all registrants after the event. Now I would like to pass the microphone to Mr. Mark Stinson, partner at Fasken, and our partner of the Japan Society for an opening remark. Onegaishimasu, Mark-san.
Thank you, Asami, and welcome everybody. Fasken is delighted to be co-hosting this event with the Japan Society and Toronto Global, and we've got an excellent program here today. So as soon as possible, I want to introduce our moderator, Johnny Tan, and he is going to take it from there. Johnny Tan is the director of the Asia Pacific team at Toronto Global, a not-for-profit Canadian government economic development agency, providing complementary and bespoke advisory services to international companies that are considering expansion in the Greater Toronto region. Johnny leads a Toronto Global Asia Pacific market team with a prioritized approach to supporting Japanese companies land in the Toronto region with a focus on expansion projects such as e-mobility, autonomous and connected vehicles tech, proprietary R&D on artificial intelligence apps, digital transformation, tech scouting, and more. Prior to joining Toronto Global, Johnny was the business development team lead at JETRO Toronto, supporting bilateral trade and investment projects between Canada and Japan across key sectors, including sustainable energy, waste management, next generation innovations, and the like. So Johnny, I hand it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks a lot for that kind intro. Hello, everyone. I know a lot of our audience is actually tuning in from the West Coast. So to you, a big ohayou gozaimasu. Everybody else, konnichiwa. Thank you very much for joining us today. I want to start off by saying a big thank you to Asami at Japan Society, and then Mark, Annie, and Stephen, of course, at Fasken for inviting myself and my colleagues at Toronto Global to be part of this event today. We're very happy to be a part of this and moderating some of this conversation. It's an honor and privilege to moderate such a distinguished panel of speakers on e-mobility specifically, a topic of which it's not only hot and relevant, but it pertains to something that is really important to kind of global economic development, which is energy and sustainability as we move forward, right? Now, before we move ahead and jump into the panel, if you can please indulge me for 20 seconds for a shameless plug, just to really add quickly to Mark's really kind intro. I'm from Toronto Global. We're a not-for-profit government agency, and we want to help international companies investigate, research, and land in the Toronto area if there's any sort of interest from you guys, right? So, subsequent to this event today, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. You're going to be really piqued by your interest is going to be piqued by a lot of the conversations and topics we're talking about today, feel free to reach out to myself and of course, Asami and Annie as well. And we'd love to take it from there. And so enough about that. Let's jump right into the panel. So basically the rundown is we're going to introduce each speaker. They're going to give a quick presentation on their organization and topic. And then afterwards, we're going to jump right into the meaty part of the conversation, which is the panel and the fireside chat, you know, answer some of your burning questions that some of you have already impatiently sent in during registration, which we love, right? So without further ado, first we have really, you know, batting lead off for us today. We have Mr. Steven Rosenhek, partner at our wonderful co-organizer today, Fasken. And so if you bear with me, I'm going to read his really long qualification and achievements to really paint the picture and give you context on the expert speaker that he is today. Steven is one of Canada's leading litigation lawyers, a senior partner in the litigation and class action group. He has extensive experience in complex commercial cases, major national and international class actions, commercial arbitration, product liability, life sciences, and antitrust matters. Steven is widely recognized for his skill as a senior trial lawyer before all levels of court in Canada and a wide range of administrative and regulatory bodies. So really applicable to our conversation today, guys. And of course, he is really well qualified because he is the chair of the firm's Automotive group. That's really important. Steven has taught at both law schools in Toronto, the University of Toronto's Faculty of Law and also Osgoode Hall Law School. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Steven, and take it away, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Johnny. Welcome, everyone. My topic is government funding and incentives. And as Johnny mentioned, I'm speaking to you as the leader of our automotive group at the firm. And just for a second to tell you about that group, it is one of the largest automotive groups in the country within law firms. It is a multidisciplinary group. That is to say that we have lawyers and professionals drawn from all different areas of practice who work on and advise automotive clients in the automotive space. And our team of professionals and lawyers includes people from our dedicated government relations team, and I'll allude to that a little bit later. I'm going to tell you about the availability of funding, but my message to you in the end is going to be that the best opportunities for a company that's looking to locate or relocate to Ontario or to repurpose its operations in Ontario to take advantage of opportunities in the green tech space. The best opportunities for those companies is to arise from consulting with government, usually at the highest levels, rather than taking advantage of existing programs. Can we just go to the first slide, please? So there is a huge wave of interest by governments in Canada towards green tech. This has been announced as a federal government priority. It is one that has ramifications for both consumers and for companies that are setting up here or investing in green tech. So there are rebates to consumers that have been offered by government as part of this push on making Canada a hub for example, battery technology and focusing on electronic vehicle manufacturing technologies. So we have direct, from the federal perspective, direct rebates to consumers, and we have a variety of programs to support the full life cycle of battery technology, of the battery technology industry in Canada, and complementary programs that are offered by the provinces. And so within various provinces, Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, there are rebates for zero emission vehicles. There are various programs offered to encourage the purchase of zero emission vehicles. And for your interest, particularly as participants in this webinar, industry-focused programs to promote jobs in these areas, in technology development, as well as in manufacturing. We just go to the next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about what the key standardized funding programs in Canada include. And there are three main pillars of these programs as they pertain to the green tech space. The first are regional development agencies that provide various funding programs across the country. And one of those is FedDev Ontario, which offers repayable contributions of up to $10 million per project. As well, there are IRAP and SHRED opportunities. These are funding offered by the federal government for innovative research, and they relate to various projects that either are going to be approved or have undergone an approval process previously. And then the final pillar is comes from Innovative Solutions Canada, which funds projects in targeted centers. And one example is something that is now closed, but was called the Connected Vehicle and Engineered Surfaces Challenge, under which projects could receive up to a $1 million grant. The table that follows just gives you an overview of these programs that are offered, the ones that I just described, that are offered in Canada. And so those give you some idea of the type of funding that's made available, the amounts of the funding that might be available under those resources and programs, and who and what industries those projects, and so those programs are targeted, and what are the goals of those projects. So you see that they range, as I said before, from tax incentives to non-repayable financial assistance, to no interest loans, as well as to grants and the opportunity to take part in federal procurement policies. We can go to the next slide. Ontario is currently looking to create new programs for funding green tech broadly. And those initiatives include the funding of a transition of Ontario's automotive sector. Traditionally, the automotive sector in Canada has been based in Ontario and Quebec. It is a traditional automotive sector, and one that the government very much wants to see changed and modified to encompass their green tech, the government's both federal and provincial aspirations in terms of green tech technology and the creation of jobs related to those technologies. There is currently funding of up to $1.5 million per project available through various funds in relation to different parts of Ontario. We can go to the next slide, please. The expectations are that the spring budgets at both the federal and provincial level are going to contain new programs as part of COVID relief and in general to generate green tech development. And some of the things that we're hearing about are at the federal level, possible carbon capture tax credits for industry, new support for the battery industry, and specifically grants for R&D and other forms of funding, and revisions to tax legislation to make it more tax efficient to invest in and take advantage of green technology. On the provincial level, because budgets are also unveiled in the provinces in the spring, it's anticipated that there will be new pushes towards infrastructure development, such as roadside charging and automated battery swapping. There is talk about plans to build these into the the network of provincial highways, the 400 highway series in Ontario, to make these available at service centers with respect to these facilities, to have these facilities available at service centers on these 400 highways. There are other ideas about making charging access available in all newly built homes, and renewal of regional innovation funding, which will again support manufacturing and research clusters in this space. We can go to the next slide, please. One of the key messages that I would want to deliver during this presentation is the importance of asks at a high level of government. And my message to you in that regard is that large-scale projects, very significant capital-intensive projects, and funding of those projects usually results from direct consultation with the political branches of government. And in Canada and in the province of Ontario, those two are the Prime Minister's office in Canada and the Premier's office in Ontario. A perfect example of this is the recently announced $590 million combined funding from Ontario and the federal government provided to the Ford Motor Company to build a repurposed battery electric vehicle production plant. This is at Ford's Oakville Assembly Complex. That retooled facility is expected to produce up to 5 electric vehicle models as of 2025. And previously that plant's future was somewhat uncertain beyond 2023, when the vehicles that it currently produced were to be sunset. This is a project that is heralded by the government to create and support 5,400 jobs. And again, it throws into the spotlight the federal government's broader battery strategy, which I alluded to before, which is to make Canada a world leader in various aspects of battery technology. We can go to the next slide, please. The reason I say high-level asks are so key is because existing programs, such as the ones I alluded to earlier, are generally small, and they are generally designed to support growth stage companies as opposed to established companies who are looking to make sizable investments with respect to technology and to drive the creation of jobs. And so larger scale investments are made when they drive the top tier government priorities. And the perfect storm, the perfect combination of things is green tech, clean tech, which is clearly something that the government is working very hard to promote, along with opportunities for job growth. A perfect example being the Ford motor plant refitting that I just alluded to. It is very much expected that post-COVID, we'll see sizable government investment in manufacturing in order to stimulate job growth. We can go to the next slide, please. So how does one take advantage of these opportunities that I indicated are there, and the opportunities that are of a sizable magnitude? The Ford deal will not be the last major government investment in zero emissions vehicles. Far from it. It is clear that the federal government and the Ontario government are interested in committing resources to transitioning the existing automotive manufacturing sector in Ontario to electric vehicles. And so what this means is that companies need to make their case to decision makers at the highest political levels not just rely on programs such as the ones I described earlier that are smaller in scale, designed for different purposes, and which don't carry with them the same magnitude of benefits. And so what a company should strive for, any company that's looking to invest on a large scale in Ontario, should be thinking about aligning with policy goals in both clean tech and economic development. That should also fit with regional goals, such as transitioning the auto sector, which is based in Southwest Ontario, and transitioning it to electric vehicle manufacturing, and making sure that there's a broad-based shareholder support for the project and for the initiative, which needs to come with efforts to engage those shareholders and make sure that their voices are heard. If we go to the next slide, please. So to conclude and recap where I think we are right now and where I think you as companies that are looking to consider investing in Ontario and making sizable transitions with respect to green tech, these are some of the key points that I think need to be made clear. Investments will be made, and large-scale investments particularly, will be made after there has been direct consultation with government, as opposed to simply making use of existing programs. Ontario will definitely, post-COVID, be looking for enhanced opportunities to restart the economy and rebuild confidence. Key to those goals will be the creation of new jobs and attracting new investment. Transportation and mobility sectors are a key opportunity for the government to achieve its objectives in this space. And so those who wish to take advantage of these opportunities need to understand the imperatives that will drive the government decision-making on those projects that it considers worthy of investments. Transition to low-carbon transportation, electrification, the need for new supply chains and innovative technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Those are all front and center of any current government's mandate and aspirations for the future. And there is therefore a need to tell your story to the right decision makers, the ones preferably at the highest level, and the influencers and the stakeholders in order to secure the maximum available benefits. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephen. Actually, you must have piqued the interest of a lot of our audience today, because we're getting some questions coming in around how can companies navigate some of these custom high-level asks and you know, that are outside of the existing programs that are offered. But we'll keep that right there, you know, a little teaser for audience when we get to the panel portion. But that's a great transition in terms of how are the companies going to utilize some of those, you know, innovation incentives. You know, what better than to partner with one of the largest research universities in the world, at University of Toronto. So if you can please allow me to introduce our next set of speakers. We have Professor Cristina Amon and Dr. Carlos de Silva from University of Toronto. They're going to share with us the fantastic new electrification initiative across the entire campus. More importantly, again, how can some of our audience companies utilize those really highly skilled researchers through, you know, proprietary R&D, but really market access as well. So very quickly, if I can introduce our two speakers. Professor Amon is the Alumni Distinguished Professor and Dean Emerita of the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering at the University of Toronto. She is also the Director of Atoms Laboratory and Academic Lead of the University of Toronto Electrification Lab, which they will elaborate more on. Professor Amon is a licensed professional engineer, elected fellow of all major professional societies in her field, and an honorary member of ASME. and has contributed over to 400 referred articles to the education and research literature. She's been inducted into the Canadian Academy of Engineering, Hispanic Engineering Hall of Fame, Royal Society of Canada, Spanish Royal Academy, and the US National Academy of Engineering. She is also the founding chair of Global Engineering Deans Council and served on numerous editorial and technical conference roles, advisory and review boards all across North America and abroad. Next, we also have, accompanying her, is Dr. Carlos da Silva. He is a research associate at University of Toronto's Adams Laboratory and the executive director of the U of T Electrification Hub. He holds a PhD in mechanical engineering from University of Toronto. Carlos has accumulated extensive experience as a researcher, directing research projects in areas such as thermal management for batteries, charger, electric vehicles, prototyping, and testing of energy storage systems, and much more. So without further ado, if I can throw it to you, Carlos and Cristina.
Thank you, Johnny, for your kind introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. So I will have the pleasure to give a brief introduction about the University of Toronto Engineering and some of our innovation clusters. And then Dr. Carlos da Silva will introduce a new initiative, the Electrification Hub at the University of Toronto. Just a brief introduction. As many of you know, the University of Toronto is the highest ranked university in Canada and is a leading global institution in education, in research, and entrepreneurship. And here we see part of a view of the University of Toronto, located downtown Toronto, one of the 3 campuses that we have, that is at the heart of the city, near the hospital system, the Mars Innovation Cluster, together with the Vector AE, Artificial Intelligence Institute, and the financial hub of the city. So we're proud of our reputation globally, and also the fact that we're located in the 4th largest North America city, and the city that is having the largest diversity in terms of the population and the economic environment. It's also the 3rd largest ICT cluster in the design industry in North America. And within it, we have the Toronto's innovation ecosystem. Next slide, please. Here we see an aerial view of the university, particularly with the new building that we have just inaugurated recently, the Michael Center for Engineering, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. We have in engineering over 25 research institutes and centers, multidisciplinary, that cut across different areas and beyond engineering. We're a fairly large faculty with 8,000 students, and we have an unparalleled teaching and research activities that are housed within our 19 buildings, both on and off campus. To further embed innovation and multidisciplinarity collaboration into all we do at the University of Toronto in engineering, we recently opened the building that I was mentioning about, which has been possible by the support of the engineering community, as well the generous support of the government of Ontario. And that's what is to emphasize what was just said by the prior speaker. Next slide, please. So here is a view with the different environments within this building that has 9 different levels, equipped with technology-enhanced learning spaces, a 2-story robotics lab, fabrication facilities, and studios. So our students, our researchers can iterate on their innovations and bring their prototype to life. Also within this building, we have the Entrepreneurship Hatchery, which is a startup incubator that nurtures a culture of entrepreneurship among our students and faculty members. So from startup incubators to co-ops, to international exchange programs, we create a rich experiential learning opportunities for our students to enhance both their technical and their professional skills. Next, please, next slide. So I want to share with you one of the many partnerships that we have with industry and our connections which extend globally. And this is fairly new partnership created in year 2018 with a very relevant company for this webinar, which is Fujitsu Labs. And we launched the Fujitsu Co-Creation Research Laboratory at the University of Toronto, which is the first Canadian R&D center for this company, or the first center in Canada for R&D for Fujitsu. And in addition of the partnership in research, we also have space within this building that has been allocated for a temporal number of years to Fujitsu with the objective to accelerate this collaborative and multidisciplinary work. And in this particular effort, the research is related to machine learning, quantum computing, smart cities, advanced healthcare, and financial technology. So just to give you an indication of the partnership and the outcomes, to date, this effort has led to 10 patents jointly filed between University of Toronto researchers and Fujitsu, the publication of about 30 joint research papers, as well as over $7.5 million in direct funding and in-kind contributions from research. Next slide, please. So just to summarize the first part of this talk, I want to share with you the innovation engineering clusters that we have defined short while ago. And as I want to emphasize, innovation is a critical part of all we do at U of T Engineering, from the way we educate our students to the groundbreaking research we conduct in our world-class facilities. And if we look at the themes of the clusters, we see that robotics, sustainability, advanced manufacturing are all topics that are very relevant to the EV and the electrification and e-mobility efforts, as well as data analytics and AI. So it is precisely our strength in research, innovation, and our ability to pivot quickly that is what has inspired the definition in these 6 innovation clusters. So these are areas that we have a strong concentration of expertise, facilities, partnerships, and in particular, top-notch research that is being done by our students, researchers, and faculty members. And in these areas, we have a very strong track record of success in publications and in patents and bringing this insight and these innovations to market. So with this brief introduction, I would like to call on Dr. Carlos da Silva to introduce the University of Toronto Electrification Hub, which is a strategic initiative within our innovation clusters to bring together expertise, which is world-class, from multiple researchers to contribute to the electrification revolution.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Amon. It's a pleasure for me to be here today with all of you. As Professor Amon highlighted, the University of Toronto is exceptionally well positioned to contribute to the electrification revolution. Just last year, we launched the University of Toronto Electrification Hub. This hub is a university-wide transformative strategy leveraging our strength in battery and charging technology and expand our research impact across the entire electrification ecosystem. And I'm talking about electric transportation, charging infrastructure, microgrids, and renewable. This hub is is building a vibrant research ecosystem with multidisciplinary projects and fostering collaborations with Toronto's fast-growing e-mobility sector. Next slide, please. So the Electrification Hub covers a broad range of technologies through 6 pillars, from batteries from materials to batteries to e-mobility system to stationary applications to adoption enablers. Next slide, please. Pillar 1 covers material discovery, battery manufacturing, and recycling. Our researchers at the University of Toronto are working on post-lithium batteries using earth-abundant elements, also leveraging Canada's huge base of key base raw materials. Our researchers are also working on machine learning-driven battery material discovery, battery manufacturing robotics, and also sustainable recycling of battery materials. Next slide, please. Pillar 2 covers modeling, optimization, and data analytics research activities in the context of the development of batteries and e-mobility systems. Our researchers are working on high-fidelity, multi-scale, hierarchical modeling and optimization tools for batteries and electronics. I can mention here that Professor Amon's lab, in which I'm also a research associate, Atoms Laboratory, is playing a key role in this second pillar. Next slide, please. Pillar 3 focuses on the core subsystems enabling the electrification of transportation. I'm talking about battery packs, powertrain, and chargers. Our researchers at the University of Toronto have already conducted several cycles of prototyping and tests of cutting-edge concepts of these subsystems. The Electrification Hub is leading an ambitious industry outreach strategy and creating opportunities to leverage our e-mobility technology in collaboration with industry partners. Next slide, please. Pillar 4 focuses on e-mobility systems, and I'm referring to passengers, electric vehicles, electric buses, electric bikes, electric trucks, and electric fleets. Our hub is connecting university subsystem developers with manufacturers of e-mobility systems to deploy and integrate our battery, powertrain, and charging technologies on the realistic operating conditions. We have here at the University of Toronto our own concept EV in which we are deploying and testing our technology. However, for these activities, there are also numerous partnership opportunities in the greater Toronto area and in Ontario as well. I can mention, as it was already mentioned in the presentation before, that 3 major automotive OEMs, and I'm talking about Ford, General Motors, and Fiat Chrysler, have announced plans to manufacture EV in the coming years. Also, the city of Toronto now have the largest fleet of electric buses in North America, and many other pilot projects in the area around e-bikes, delivery vans, and small recreational vehicles. Next slide, please. Our pillar 5 focuses on what we call synergistic stationary applications. Batteries are enabling transformative developments not only in e-mobility, but also in a stationary system that rely on energy storage, renewable energy system, residential and industrial microgrid, and off-grid remote communities. Some of the research activities in this pillar include a very exciting project, which is repurposing degraded automotive batteries in less demanding second life stationary energy storage applications, and also battery-assisted charging infrastructure. Next slide, please. Our last pillar, pillar 6, is dedicated to adoption enablers and co-benefits. This pillar is fostering multidisciplinary collaborations among engineering, public health, and urban planning experts on a variety of timely subjects impacting e-mobility adoption. To name a few, changes in travel behavior, policy issues, vehicle ownership levels, air pollution and health co-benefits, and many, many others. Next slide, please. Our electrification hub involves more than 30 faculty members and research groups. In this slide, I'm listing some of these groups with whom we have already launched several multidisciplinary projects under the umbrella of this electrification hub. To conclude our presentation, I will let Professor Amon now to give some final remarks about the different partnership scenarios with the University of Toronto. Next slide, please.
So here we summarize, yeah, I am unmute, yes. Here we summarize different approaches to partner with the University of Toronto from corporations and for OEMs. The project could be a goal-driven, a strategic, or comprehensive partnership. And a goal-driven will be for a focused topic with a collaborative research, which also includes the development of talent or graduate students that potentially can then become part of the company or the effort in the industry. So here we contribute not only with expertise as appropriate, with equipment for the R&D, and then we can go all the way to comprehensive partnership as those listed on the acronyms there of the different companies. Fujitsu, we already mentioned, Hatch, IBM, LG, Ford, and Siemens. In this comprehensive partnership, there are several aspects of the strategic approach and also coordination and integration between research, corporate activities, and as appropriate educational, both at the company level, but also students, such that they become the pool for talent hiring in the future. And with this, over to you, Johnny.
Thank you, Professor Amon. Thank you, Dr. De Silva. I think it goes without saying that University of Toronto is a major, if not the main pillar in terms of Canada's innovation value proposition. And that's definitely evident when we're helping navigate a lot of the conversations with especially Japanese companies that are looking for Canada in terms of certain tech scouting needs, certain innovation needs. And so would love to dive in a little bit deeper on the road mapping to maybe the recruiting part, the market access part. But again, a little bit of a teaser. We'll get into that when we get to the actual discussion conversation in a couple of minutes. So with that, I'm going to transition to our last speaker. And it's a great transition because it exemplifies the quality of the talent that's coming out of the U of T pipeline, right, Wilson? And I'll quickly introduce Mr. Wilson Ma from Lifecycle. Give me 1 second here as I pull up his profile again. Wilson joined Lifecycle January of this year, actually very recently, as the Vice President of Corporate Development to spearhead Lifecycle's efforts to scale its operation globally while leading other strategic initiatives. He received his MBA from University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management and also holds a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Toronto. So it's all coming from one tree. Prior to joining Lifecycle, Wilson built a highly proficient team and embedded a broad base of capabilities to grow Emerson Electric's company business in Canada as its Director of Growth and Business Transformation. Some notable accomplishments of Wilson's include leading customer innovation and co-creation of partnerships, expanding into subscription-based service models, and driving growth across different supply chains, which is really timely because I think a lot of our Japanese audience is going to be really interested in not only learning how to work with Lifecycle, but how can they work with a partner that's such a key asset in really the supply chain of e-mobility here in Canada, right? So over to you, Wilson.
Thanks, Johnny. And yes, I am a proud graduate of U of T. In fact, Professor Amon was my dean almost 15 years ago. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for having Lifecycle at this event. We were founded in 2016 by Ajay Kachar and Tim Johnston. We're currently the largest lithium-ion resource recovery company in North America, and we do so through a safe, scalable, and patented two-stage technology. We're about 100 employees now based here in Toronto, and we have plans to go public on the New York Stock Exchange in the very near future. On the slide that you see right in front of you, my colleagues predominantly talked about the front end of the supply chain. Lifecycle is really focused on the back end, closing that circular loop of the battery supply chain. It's not just about end-of-life waste management, but rather it's about security. It's about allowing Canada to have a steady and secure access to the supply of critical materials domiciled to the country. This will enable cell, module, pack, and vehicle production such that Canada can fully participate in the e-mobility industry. If we go further onto the top right-hand side of this slide, you'll notice that there's a tsunami of incoming spent batteries available for recycling. That's actually indicative of the demand that's currently being generated and consumed now, which will be available for recycling by 2030. So we can see 2.6 million tons of lithium-ion batteries available for recycle by 2030. If we can go to the next slide, specific to Toronto and why we chose to locate here. We are at the forefront of building and scaling a new supply chain. Our head office, which includes R&D, engineering, and business development, is located here in the GTA, and it leverages what Professor Amon referred to as the clustering of academia, R&D, piloting, all the way through commercialization and scale-up. There's also a confluence of advisory services, legal, tax, accounting, among others. And certainly, Lifecycle is a proud recipient of some early-stage government funding to develop our technology. We are also fortunate to be in a position to have raised Series A, B, and C successfully. And the availability of capital and certainly the focus from capital markets is an important position for most startups moving ahead in clean tech. Furthermore, production in Southern Ontario is strong. Manufacturing and certainly access to labor is readily available as we start to think about production and development. So we have a facility here in Kingston, Ontario, which is about 2 hours drive from Toronto to help in the mechanical processing of these batteries. So I'd say the network effect is fairly strong. If we can advance 2 more slides, please. From a strategic point of view, Asia is a priority area for Lifecycle. In fact, we are currently engaging Japanese companies in Japan, especially the ones focusing around battery technology. And there's certainly a lot of trading companies, Sogo Shoshas, that we're engaged in as well to further our strategic mandate. So whether you're coming over from Japan for the first time, or you have a presence in Canada but are looking to participate in this industry and supply chain, I'd say there's definitely a willingness for companies like Lifecycle to engage in collaboration. So whether it's leveraging Toronto as a bed for open innovation, whether we're doing corporate R&D, we're really looking to be of service to help de-risk your company by allowing you to place bets in this new industry through companies like us. Furthermore, organizations like Toronto Global, economic development agencies, and foreign trade commissioners serve as a great conduit to accessing local companies and to connecting the dots locally to help you succeed. So look forward to the Q&A, and thank you for the time.
All right, thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Wilson. Well, thank you for the boost and shout out there. Really appreciate that. But really, when you close the circle on that, the cluster building and really mapping out why the Toronto global area and really Ontario and Canada as a whole is a really growing a hotbed and for e-mobility and for companies to really engage with, right? So before we jump really right into the questions, I actually wanted to bring it back to what Stephen had initially talked about, because again, he started this with a high level discussion on how a Japanese company or international company can consider coming in. And a lot of the times it will be based upon the business needs, and then what are some of the incentives and programming that a company can navigate. So a question that I would like to throw to Stephen first, if I can, is if you can elaborate on, in your presentation, you had alluded to certain high level asks, or, you know, make the case for companies to navigate and really access top decision makers. Can you elaborate a little bit further on that, and how can Fasken, you know, with your lead, help hold the hands of these companies and make it worthwhile for them to consider Canada, Ontario, and potentially Toronto region for expansion? Oh, we might have muted you by accident. If you can, yeah.
There we are. All right, I think I'm back. Thanks, Johnny. So I think what we're talking about here is experience, know-how, and access to top decision makers. You need to know to whom to make the case. You need to know that, and that's a matter of experience. You need to have access to the people that you think you need to make the case to, and you need to know how to make the best case that there is. You know, you need to understand how decisions are made in government, what is going to prompt a government to want to invest in a project, and you need to ring all the bells for those decision makers so that they find it a compelling case to make that investment. I'm very proud of our dedicated government relations team. As I say, it is a standout, I think, in terms of the Canadian legal landscape, because most firms do not have dedicated legal professionals who handle government relations. Our government relations team, or any specialized government relations team, understands how decisions are made, understand why, for example, the Ontario government wants to attract a particular company and invest in a company's operations here. And so you really need to be well positioned at the intersection of politics, business, and large-scale public investment. We pride ourselves in understanding government decision-making. We've got a team that includes a former Premier of Ontario, Mike Harris, former chief of staff to a Canadian Prime Minister, various highly placed former policy advisors to federal cabinet ministers and Ontario cabinet ministers. And we're confident that we can make the case in the most compelling way to serve your interests. It is a matter of keeping in contact with those who are decision makers on a regular basis. And we do that. We keep in touch with people who are in the posts that make these decisions. And so we're happy to make that story. And we think that you do really need to invest in somebody who can make your case in the best, most compelling way to the highest level of government.
Thank you, Stephen. And that's a great point, and that really is a great transition to my next question: is making that case, right? What is that business case for that company to come into Ontario, come into Toronto? You guys help them navigate with the relationship into the higher policymakers, which I'll come back to in terms of some of the other legal hurdles that, you know, companies might come into, but I'm going to jump to another one of our speakers today. To Stephen's point, in terms of making that case, if the company now has access to, let's say, decision-making policy, some help in terms of accessing certain incentive programs, to apply those incentive programs, a lot of it revolves around innovations, right? Again, which is then we're going to go to University of Toronto, Carlos and Cristina, to you guys. You guys gave a great high-level overview of University of Toronto's research powerhouse and capabilities, and a great intro into electrification initiative. So for some of our maybe e-mobility companies that are in the audience today, what does that roadmap specifically look like? So for example, if a company has plans to fill this gap in the supply chain here, and they want to do proprietary research with you guys on a certain topic, how does that work from, let's say, the initial query to us at Toronto Global? We bring them to you guys. How do you guys pull in different professors? As you mentioned, it's across the entire campus. How does that look like for them? Timeline, some initial tips that they should be coming to asking you, certain questions they should be asking you, and then where can they potentially look like afterwards in terms of the recruiting part of it, the market access part of it, working with some of your past grads like Wilson at Lifecycle. How do you help them navigate introductions to them, right? So again, a bit of a loaded question, but if you can give us an intro, a little bit more detail into how that they can utilize you guys to get into the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Well, that question has many components. Let me try to address some of them. Once the company has an interest in a given proprietary R&D project, then it's a matter, as you said, to get the matching between the expertise and experts at the University of Toronto and the R&D goals. And that can come initially, yes, through Toronto Global. And then we offer an office of corporate partnership within engineering in this new electrification hub. And here we have people that will be able to make the right connections between the project and the experts. So this dialogue, this communication starts to identify the match. And then once the R&D project is defined, depends on the different tasks, along with the milestones, the duration, the cost, then there will be an agreement signed by all parties, which will include background and foreground ownership when appropriate, as well as what will be the agreement on the intellectual property, joint patents, and all these laid out in advance during this agreement stage. So we're happy to send or share a sample agreement for those of you interested. And the other component of the question is then how to utilize a research partnership and how to leverage that into the access to Toronto and Ontario ecosystem, such as hiring and market access. So by having this relationship with the faculty researchers through the research partnership, this also gives the access to the graduate students working on those projects, as well as the participation in a number of hiring fairs, which are hosted by the University of Toronto, and an ability to recruit effectively within the university. In the example of the Fujitsu Co-Creation Lab on campus is one of those examples, which in addition includes having some space on campus to work closely with the researchers, since this is an effort coming from out of the country while they grow their efforts and they move to another more suitable or larger space. So these are some of the ideas. And together, there are, yes, opportunities for joint effort on programs that exist. But as also was indicated during this webinar, there are many opportunities or greater opportunities to approach government directly, depending on the scope of the initiative.
That's great. I think that you hit it, a great segue that I would love to throw back to Stephen, but I'm going to go to Wilson really quickly, actually here. Because a lot of the companies we help in terms, especially from Japan, when they come and they engage Toronto Global, when they are looking at North America, a lot of their need for technology is tech scouting. They want to work with the best and the brightest that are already implementing certain technologies that they're looking to get into, right? And who better to ask than in battery and recycling specifically than Wilson. You guys, what you guys are doing is globally leading. You guys are one of the global leaders, as apparent by the recent announcement with that progress on your end, right? So with that being said, I know you said you guys are doing a lot of business development and conversations in Japan. with your rep, I believe his name is Mori-san over there. But if we can step back, if there's an international company, first of all, do you think there's a specific place for them in the Ontario ecosystem and supply chain? And if they want to come in through a partnership with a local company like you guys, how can they potentially work with a company like Li-Cycle? Where do you see certain fits with an international company looking to come into Ontario through a partnership with a company like you guys?
Mm-hmm. Great question, Johnny. It's a very long answer. So in terms of localizing the Ontario supply chain, we need to build everything out. Precursor manufacturing, cathode manufacturing, cell manufacturing, production, and that's all within the business of today. That's all within the context of lithium-ion batteries. Certainly, additional R&D and commercialization could be done in higher density forms of energy storage like solid state. And there's also additional work to do to drive demand and end user adoption of e-mobility type solutions, be it bikes, cars, public transit. So along all those dimensions, from early stage to actually making sure that everybody on this line drives an EV or takes some sort of an EV transit, there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. In terms of partnerships, I would say a lot of firms here in Canada do have the willingness to engage firms in Japan to bring technology over or to help drive business development. And a lot of it happens through open conversations with folks at the startup level, just to explore what the potential opportunities are. Certainly, we talked about the economic drivers earlier in this webinar. They have to make financial sense, but certainly when you layer in additional benefits like incentive programs, like a steady access to talent and the ability to continue to evolve and co-create with other partners in this ecosystem, there's a huge reinforcing and circular effect to be able to continue to grow your business locally and scale it up here. Specific to Li-Cycle itself, we do look for commercial arrangements to secure manufacturing scrap, defects, rejects, spent cells for our Kingston facility. And certainly when you are in the R&D phase, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, and a lot of the waste that comes from that stream does funnel into our business. Li-Cycle is also a good source of battery grade materials for inputs into Japanese companies' supply chains as well. So for example, we can derive battery grade lithium, nickel, manganese, and cobalt, which could be used in battery applications or others. And finally, we can explore new unique forms of batteries that the chemistry may not be known or created now, but we're flexible to have corporate R&D arrangements to be able to find a way to commercialize that with you. And again, we talked about the term co-creation multiple times on this webinar. And I think true to its form, as we push the boundaries in these new spaces, not everybody has the answer, or the answer is not known. And so it's really about working together with multiple parties to help de-risk the innovation and then bring it to market faster.
Thank you. That's really good. That's a really good highlight. And I want to pick 2 points: commercialize and scale up, right? And I think, Stephen, you had alluded to a big domino that fell earlier, I think towards the end of last year, is Ford announcing their lines of EV production here. And of course, for myself, working for Ontario, working for Toronto, we love to see more part of that supply chain to come in, right? Where then you drive the demand for other parts, R&D, research, and so on and so forth. So when we do, let's say, for example, have an incoming company of that size and stature, in addition to all the incentives that they may be offered, in addition to all the wonderful R&D that they can have access to here in Toronto, what are some of the other legal issues, regulatory issues, policy issues that you would maybe give tips on that they should be looking to navigate? And I'm going to amalgamate this with actually an audience question that we just got in, is how is the new North American content rule under CUSMA affect EV OEMs, right? So all those things, what are some of the things that they should be considering at the regulatory level? Oh, again, we might have mistakenly muted you again.
There we are.
Sorry.
Sorry, it's a great question, and it's a great question for the audience. It's too complicated to kind of summarize the trade issues because they are new and some of them are still evolving. But the bottom line is, on all these things, there are so many different legal issues that are connected to coming into or retooling facility or transitioning a manufacturing process to another one. There's issues about where to locate the bricks and mortar, the municipality in which you might locate in, because of course, apart from the types of opportunities that I discussed in my presentation, there are, basic issues about whether or not you can get an incentive from a particular municipality to locate in a particular part of town or in a particular city. And so those are key considerations. There are also tax implications of how the business is going to be structured, how the transition is going to take place. There are issues, as you pointed out, Johnny, about regulatory issues. Clearly, many of these things need to be thought out well in advance, not only in terms of the timing of getting things underway, but also whether or not things can be gotten underway in a particular way, and what all of that should be done hand in hand, and with an eye on all of the things that I talked about. You can't separate one from the other. It's a package decision. All of these things are relevant considerations, and you need advice on all those things. One of the things we like to think of is that we offer sort of a one-stop shopping opportunity to get both the strict legal advice on things like tax, privacy issues, the like, all the things that, practice areas of law, as well as the government relations side of things and the accessing of funding. So it's very important. It's not to take away from all of these other things that are very important when we talk about funding. It's to really accentuate the fact that funding and taking advantage of these opportunities financially is just a small part of the puzzle, and you really do need to have your eyes and ears on all of these things and understand, how an advisor can advise you on all these things, even some of the things that you might not have thought of, because those are the things that you want to avoid any unexpected surprises. Even if you've got one thing or two things or three things sorted out, you want to make sure that there are no other surprises from things that you didn't think about.
That is absolutely true. Stephen, just a quick aside for us at Toronto Global, when we bring in a client, we bring in literally our 3 sets of speakers today is the blueprint in which we close clients, right? Professional legal advice, the academic portion in terms of tapping into the exploding tech talent and research part of it with University of Toronto. And then we have industry experts, right? That's how you triangulate some of these conversations. And so you hit it right on the head. So in addition to access to funding, legal advice, and conversations with decision makers, I want to bring it back again to University of Toronto, where this is why their electrification initiative is so great, because you're able to triangulate a platform to find the crossroad of industry needs, academic research, and government policy, and pushing, let's say, sustainability and e-mobility forward, right? So then I want to throw it back to Carlos and Cristina. One, if you had any additional comment on the role that University of Toronto can play as really the conduit to this triangulation. And then 2, in addition, another audience question, more on the research side, solid state batteries, but we can get to that afterwards. But if you can maybe comment on really at least help me understand, because I can contextualize, and what I'm seeing is that this initiative you guys are driving is a great conduit to that triangulation that Stephen is talking about.
Carlos, do you want to take this question?
Yes, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that in the context of our initiative and how our initiative is providing a solution to all the mobility industry and the approach that we are taking. So I wanted to emphasize the vertical integration of our broad scope, looking holistically, right? From the material development, from the battery development, all the way to the whole system and even deployment of batteries beyond that. So that is a trend that we are seeing in the industry. That is something that we wanted also to portray through our electrification hub, exposing not only our researchers, but companies that want to partner with us to that approach, right? So one of the aspects that is unique about our approach is that we are bringing together researchers at the University of Toronto that are not necessarily working directly on e-mobility technology, but they are working on other technologies that are complementary to further developing aspects of the electric mobility technology. And we are convinced that is in that combination of expertise that innovation could happen. I don't know if Professor Amon would like to add more on that.
One comment I want to make for our colleagues from Japan and outside Ontario is about the amazing density of talent that we have in the GTA and in Ontario. This region has the largest number of technology engineering schools actually in the world, and very quickly to name them: University of Toronto, Waterloo, Ryerson, Queen's, Windsor, Mac, Western. All these are top engineering also schools, creating the tech talent that is needed to have an ecosystem that really is prepared for great success and to flourish. And also attached to that, which is very relevant, is the large number of international graduate students that we receive, most of them very interested to remain in Canada and with immigration approaches that are very, I would say, friendly, especially when we compare south to the border and other places. And certainly our alum, we're very proud of Wilson Ma, also the CEO of the company is an alum from U of T, and we can see, right, how all these companies have their roots in the very strong technical foundation of the universities, and this approach that is collaborative, multidisciplinary, that really is prompt to create a rich ecosystem.
Thank you. That's exactly it in terms of creating overlaps, right? And that kind of brings me to actually
Johnny, can I just make a comment?
Yes, please, please.
Carlos made a great comment, and he used the word that I think I would have wanted to use, which is a holistic approach. And one of the great things about this program is that it groups together people and institutions that are able, based on their experience, to hit the ground running. You don't want to, you want to tap into the expertise from the academic sector, from the regulatory and the legal sector, from the industry perspective, through Wilson and his company. Everyone here knows about this industry very well, knows who the players are in the industry, knows what the best way of going about doing what needs to be done in their respective spheres of influence. And that's what's so important. So I would just stress that for those who are interested in entering this type of dialogue about coming into Canada or coming into Ontario and talking about some of these things, it's really important that you understand that the people that are going to be your best resources are the people who have done it and know it well, because there's really no point in starting from the ground. You waste a lot of time, you spin your wheels, and you lose out on opportunities. And it's great that we have people, you know, represented by U of T and Lifecycle and in our firm. I would also say that we really do know about this industry very well, and we're in touch with what's going on. We're also predicting what's coming up the ranks and what's coming down the road, so to speak, so that we're staying ahead of the curve and not reactive, but being proactive, which is so important when you're, because things change very quickly and you don't want to be behind the curve.
No, that's great. That's a great point. Thank you for articulating that. Speaking of holistic, it's really, that's why we have our three set of speakers, because you guys represent and personify the ecosystem here. Sorry, Carlos, did you want to jump in?
Yeah,
yes.
I just wanted to comment something else about this holistic approach and how we can use that holistic approach to solve very important problems. And one of them is heavily related to batteries, and it's about, for instance, the cold weather, right? Cold weather has tremendous implications on battery performance and e-mobility in general, right? So by tackling that problem from a holistic perspective, by knowing what's happening from the material development, from the electrode development, battery development, all the way to deploying that technology in e-mobility system, stationary storage, and understanding how that happens from that level, we are convinced that's the way of tackling innovation. And this is one more example of the holistic approach. And I'm talking on the technical perspective.
Sure, of course.
And
Yes, Wilson,
Johnny,
did you want to jump in? Yeah,
yeah,
please.
if I can jump in, you know, time is of the essence, and we've talked about solid state being still early stage right now, but Li-Cycle is looking at ways how we can recycle solid state batteries. So a lot of folks think about end of life as, you know, a problem in the future, but we're actively trying to solve that problem today. So in general, to Stephen's point, you know, we are actively trying to figure out how we can get ahead of the curve as well as service our current market today. In terms of Professor Amon's point about talent, we've had 5 PEY. These are professional experience year, 16-month-long internship opportunities. And we're happy to have 3 of them back right now, and we're looking to pick up the other 2 very shortly as well. So there's a continuance and there's a continued nature of talent development and talent acceleration in the industry after. So very, very happy there.
Right, okay. That's a great point. Again, that's why, again, we have such a great coverage on the conversation today. And that brings me to actually an incoming, came in 5 minutes ago, on the actual supply chain. So from your perspective, right, and I'll throw this to all 3 sets of our panelists today, you guys are really good at what you do. You have your ears to the ground in that part of the, whether it's the timeline of investment or that part of the supply chain. This question goes, we know that Toronto, Ontario has a strong value proposition for international companies to come in, but for them to further add value, despite the strength of our ecosystem and it's rapidly growing. This particular attendee is curious if there's any gaps in the EV supply chain locally that you see as an investment opportunity or a critical gap that could be and should be addressed in the near or mid future. So anybody want to jump in? Could be technology, it could be supply chain, whatever it is that you feel is relevant to this question.
I can jump in. You know, ESG, clean tech, recycling, they're all hot areas of capital inflow. Certainly right now, it's a blue ocean type of a setting right now where there's a lot of opportunities for folks complementary in the supply chain, but also even competitive in the same part of it. And so customers are asking for battery solutions, be it at the OEM level or even at the end of life level. So, you know, partners are willing to engage. In fact, we are working on some opportunities where we're thinking about white labeling our technology to partners, or we're thinking about different ways to do JVs locally and internationally. And so there's a whole setup there. The other part also is around new technology like traceability. We've heard traceability in other industries before. It could be fintech or it could be in the food chain. But now more and more we're thinking about traceability in the context of critical materials, country of origin, what's happened to them, what processing steps they've been through. Can you verify the CO2, NOx, SOx, and water savings by going through a process like ours or a competitive process versus traditional mining and refining? So there's a lot of, I'd say, primary supply chain level problems to solve, but then there's also new technology layers that can be applied because we're such a new industry.
I would say there's so many opportunities. The market, as exciting as the marketplace is and the technology that you heard about is and the hubs for research and innovation are, there is no saturation in the market to the point where it becomes uneconomic for in particular areas to enter. And so I think there are all kinds of opportunities, complementary, competitive, and I think that, you know, it's a particularly because the incentives are there, the government is very anxious to explore these opportunities. The time is very much right to be considering entry into the market here.
Great, thank you. Switching gears a little bit, I want to again throw it back to University of Toronto. From our experience working with Japanese companies at Toronto Global, when we bring them in again, it's of higher priority that they want to speak to you guys in terms of working on proprietary partnership. They see the Fujitsu model. They want to see how they can roadmap to have the similar success in working with the faculty members there. A question we have a lot is for them to have physical space and really be on campus to have that collaboration of ideas, not just virtually, but physical, kind of being there, being on campus. We understand that historically a lot of the space has been, of course, rightfully so, reserved for faculty members and students. Are there any plans on your end in terms of opening that up a little bit, with kind of mixed use space now popping up because of the new normal post-COVID? Are there any new plans on your end that you can potentially be offering certain spaces that, again, will allow for collision of ideas when companies want to come work with U of T? Oh, apologies. I feel like I'm muting everybody.
No, I'm fine. Yes, indeed, we are more than open to discuss possibilities and opportunities. As you may know, we're located downtown Toronto, so real estate is quite prime, but we see the huge benefit of having a few people from the company, especially if this one of these comprehensive partnership with a number of projects and goals, to be located or to have a space where they can come and, as you were saying, interact directly with the researchers. Laboratory space, that's a little more demanding, but certainly a lot of the R&D, if it's done in collaboration, will be done in our facilities, not dedicated to that given company only, but research facilities that are shared. So yeah, we are open to talk, and actually the creation of this building, the Michael Center for Engineering Innovation and Entrepreneurship that was inaugurated a short while ago, has a couple of floors with that purpose and that interest. And we have several companies located in spaces for their employees to interact with our researchers, indeed.
Perfect, and that's great to hear. For my personal selfish sake, that's more ammunition for me to go and promote Toronto and University of Toronto. So that's great to hear. Switching gears a little bit, another question came in, revolves around electrifying public transportation, right? And this is around, I think, the announcement that we had a little back in terms of the federal government putting some budget into helping local municipalities electrify some of their public transportation, electrifying their buses. Stephen, maybe I'll throw this over to you. With your network and your connections into the industry, how can electric companies, whether it's Japanese or otherwise, bus companies, can they, kind of lean on you with some of that relationship building? What is the best course of action if they want to maybe get into some of the procurement conversation? If not, what type of partnership they'd be working with to get into those procurement conversations?
Well, like everything else, again, it's a question of trying to figure out what your objective is and how best to obtain that objective or execute on your objective. And so, that takes some, like in all of these discussions that we're talking about in terms of making your case, it involves understanding what the objectives of the party, of the company are, to understand what are the things that are most appealing about the company's story for government, and then just to tap into the opportunities. In cases of procurement, it's knowledge about what's going on and creating opportunities, even if there aren't opportunities already in existence. There's a compelling case that can be made for this if you can tap into a government or a municipality's wish, particularly in a post-COVID period, to try to enhance economic activity and create further opportunities for jobs in particular regions. You shouldn't think that you have to look at what's on the list of published opportunities as much as try to imagine what are those opportunities that you can create with the right kind of thought process behind how to present that to the appropriate decision maker.
Great, that's great to hear, and I think you're going to be getting a lot of follow-ups from our audience on the call today. So a quick follow-up on that then, on the electrification of buses. Maybe I'll throw this over to University of Toronto or Wilson, excuse me. A lot of figures and publications and announcement we're seeing is that governments at all levels are pushing for full electrification in the next 5-10 years. What is your thought? Do you think that can be implemented, whether that's at the public transit level or maybe even implementing more on the private car, the everyday used car level? Do you guys see a quick adoption here in Canada?
Carlos, do you want to address?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, well, I wanted to comment that probably a few years ago, we thought that that was impossible, but things are changing so fast in this field, well beyond to what we expect. And there's so many incentives. On top of that, the government recently announced almost $15 billion of investment for transportation over the next 8 years. We have manufacturers of electric buses in Canada. So it seems that everything is aligned. It is challenging on the next 5 years, but knowing what we know and how fast things are moving, there's a lot of other things that have to align for a full integration of electric transportation, but we are confident that things are moving really fast. And as I said, Toronto already have the largest electric EV fleet in North America, right? So things are great for our region.
That's great, and that's just going to add more to the momentum here, right? So again, I'm going to be mindful of time here, guys. Thank you so much for the conversation. Maybe we'll end it with maybe a quick 30-second, 1 minute comment from each of our speaker on the outlook of really the Ontario and Canadian e-mobility landscape. Why should some of our audience member, whether their company's large or small, or where they lie in the ecosystem, why should they consider us? And we'll leave it at that. So maybe I'll throw it to Stephen first, if that's okay.
Sure. So I would say the future is bright, and to use another colloquial expression, the world is your oyster. There are lots of opportunities. I think my message, as I said at the outset, was to take advantage of the best opportunities for funding and financial incentives. Get people who understand government decision making, get people who understand government priorities and needs, and make your case specialized to you, not just a generic case, to the highest political level. And those opportunities exist in abundance. They are going to become more plentiful post-COVID. And so as rosy as things are right now, I think our prediction is that it's going to be far more rosy in the future.
Thank you. Professor Amon and Carlos?
So building on what Stephen is saying, I could add that also in the region, we have this innovative approach to do things, to technology, but also combining with other disciplines that are necessary to bring things to fruition. So we have an amazing talent development and immigration and prepared graduate students to aid on those endeavors. And then we have the knowledge throughout the cycle, from development at the nanoscale electrode level of batteries, all the way to recycling. And the example of life cycle, that is a recycling company, is the largest one in North America and making great inroads across the world. So I truly believe this is a place that offers the combination of conditions, from funding to technology to talent, to support for R&D to be successful, and the support from Global Toronto and all the other agencies that exist.
Thank you. Carlos, anything to add?
Yes, of course. I think it's a great moment for Toronto, for Ontario. Our automotive industry is strong, is transitioning to electrification. The federal government there's a lot of momentum at the federal level to create battery factories in Canada. On top of that, at this point, the relations or the US and Canada are very aligned towards green technology. And I think there's a very exciting time for e-mobility in general. And the University of Toronto and the workforce that we are training will play a key role in that in this moment, and especially in creating the intellectual property that is needed for that transition. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And then Wilson.
Okay, get in the industry. EV batteries are disrupting the internal combustion engine. Stationary batteries are disrupting peaker power plants, really embodying that creative destruction mentality. And where better to create the future than here in Toronto?
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Well, we're right at 3:30. I think we're a minute over, but I want to thank all the speakers. I want to thank our attendees. And with that, I want to throw it over to Mark to bring us home.
Thank you, Johnny. You know, I just want to say that say a few thank yous. First of all, to our tech group here, our friends at Webcast, Alex and Dave. Here we are with no glitches. It's about all you can ask for, so thank you. Nick Fan of Fasken, Andy Lintau, who helped him on the technical side. Johnny, to you for juggling all these questions and doing a fantastic job. And our presenters, I mean, all I can say is we have the right people, definitely, and a holistic approach, a great city. And as I look outside, starting to warm up and it's get sunny. And so please think about Toronto, everybody. And thank you very much.